My 31 male girlfriend, who's 29F, has a locked room in her house. I don't know what is in it. Originally posted on April 12th, 2017. The post read as follows. My girlfriend Amy and I have been together for 5 years, and we are planning on moving in together into her home when my lease is up in 2 months. Our relationship is great. We have arguments, but no often, and we always resolve them like rational people. Amy owns a house and she bought it about 10 years ago. The city we live in was depressed for a while. Picture Detroit, but not. Where if you were so inclined, you could buy a big house in a bad neighborhood for a song and dance and then fix it up and hope the neighborhood would come around, which is luckily what happened to her. It's a big old Victorian house with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Usually we hung out at my apartment since it was near her work and I don't have a car to get out to her place. But some weekends here and there I would spend the night. When my job went remove 5 months ago, I started spending a lot more time at her place. It wasn't until after a month I realized the one room upstairs has a latch with a padlock on it. I thought it was really weird that it was a padlock and not just a door lock. I mentioned it to her, and she just said, "Yeah, I really don't go in that room or use it." What? I mean, I get that it's a big home and she lived in it alone for a long time, so she didn't need the space, but to padlock it like that? I asked her what was in it, and she shrugged and said, "Stuff," like it was no big deal. I asked if we could open it since maybe that would be a good space for my home office, and she said no. Now, I'm really curious, and it's actually sort of eating away at me. I don't care what is in the room. I just honestly don't get why it is padlocked shut. That's weird, right? Am I being unreasonable since I'm moving in? I understand the right to privacy, and I wouldn't snoop. It's on the 2nd floor. I've been sort of paying attention now, if she goes in there or not, and I don't think she ever does. I feel like since I'm moving in, I have a right to know, but do I? I don't want to make her open it, but she's so nonchalant about it and changes the subject that my mind keeps running away with me about what could be in there. I'm just wondering what other people think, what I should do, and if I'm being unreasonable wanting to see/know what it is, this padlocked room, or if I don't have a right to. Our relationship is amazing and perfect except for this one really weird issue. And then some of the top comments were kind of joking around with the OP. Someone even made a joke post saying, number 1, 4 children from her previous marriage that she doesn't want you to know about. Number 2, her mother's mummified body. Number 3, she's secretly a slob and that's where she throws all the unwashed dishes and hoarded cat poop. Number 4, 23 cats, no more, no less, and a lot of cat poop. 5, all of her previous boyfriends and 2 ex-husbands who mysteriously disappeared. 6, her collection of fingers, they no longer fing. 7, a horse, that's why you hear those noises at night, the sound of distant nickering. 8, marijuana farm. 9, Dracula. And then someone else comments a reply to that comment saying 10, satanic altar. 11, freaky dungeon. 12, trafficked people. 13, portal to another dimension. 14, the TARDIS. And then someone comments, that room is huge on the inside. Plenty of room for all the bodies. And then the OP replies to this thread saying, cats sent me into an almost dying asthma attack, so I think if there was 23 of them, I would know. The marijuana farm is very unlikely. She's in law enforcement, LOL. Someone else says, maybe it's her clutter room, like Monica has from Friends. Another commenter says, this is straight out of a horror movie. You've been together 5 years. Some ominous locked room in the house you plan to move into is a huge fucking no-no. You do have a right to know since you're moving in. Weird, creepy secrets should not be a thing in relationships. Tell her it makes you uncomfortable and you'd like to know what's in that room before you move in. And then the OP replies to that comment saying, that's a good way to phrase it, about it making me uncomfortable. Hopefully she knows I mean it. I'm really big on privacy and respecting privacy boundaries, but this really is just driving me up a wall. Another commenter says, and while I know you two are big on privacy, you have to come back with an update on what's in the room. We need to know. unless you end up getting murdered by the clown dolls from a burned down children's hospital that are locked inside. And then the OP replies to that comment saying, "Oh God, I didn't even consider clowns. I will absolutely give an update either way. She's working in overnight tonight, so I will talk to her tomorrow." And then another commenter says, "I'm enjoying this thread so much. On a serious note though, has your girlfriend experienced any serious trauma that you're aware of?" I ask because I also had a never go in that room. Last year, my daughter almost died in her bedroom. It was a CPR and defibrillator and ambulances and a world-class children's hospital involved level incident. She's okay now, but I couldn't stay in that house again. We moved out a week later, and every time we went back to pack, I had to have my husband deal with her room, with the door closed. Just too many horrifying memories. Like I said, I know it's a stretch, but is it possible that something like that could have happened? And then the OP replies to that comment saying, "Wow, that must have been so scary. I'm glad your daughter is okay. As far as I know, there's been no trauma. But after 5 years, I would have thought I would have heard about it by now. Unless she decided to not tell me, which I would respect if it was that traumatic." And then the OP posted an update on April 15th, 2017, which was 3 days later after the original post. The post read as follows. "Here is my update. I never did figure out how to post it. Hello Reddit. I promised an update to my prior post in this sub. Sorry for no link. I'm on mobile, so not sure how to link it, but if you look in my post history, it's the only one on there. I would have posted early, but I needed some time to digest things. I had a long talk with my girlfriend when she got home from work in the morning about the locked room. She tried to blow it off a few times and get out of the conversation until I told her I couldn't move in until she told me what was in the room and I saw it for myself. I told her I didn't care what was in there. After posting here, I was more and more convinced that it was probably guns or something related to her work in law enforcement, as that really did make a lot of sense. Eventually, she just broke down sobbing. Big, giant, ugly sobs like I have never seen before. It was pretty shocking. She's not really a crier. It took a good 15 minutes before she could even start forming words that I could understand between giant sobs. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see, and I knew as soon as she started crying that it wasn't a room full of guns or work stuff. Actually, the room is empty. There is nothing in there. Someone had surmised in the comments of the other posts that maybe there was some trauma. I forgot who it was, but unfortunately, they were correct. She was basically a kid at 19 when she bought the house. Like I said, bad neighborhood, fixer-upper, etc. And it was dirt cheap due to the city she lived in and those other factors. She had always been smart with her money, so she had a big down payment and was planning on taking the rest of her savings to fix it up. I don't want to get specific with details as it's pretty gruesome and also privacy, but in her 3rd week living there, she had a home invasion while she was home in that room, and she was assaulted. She had no money to move and no family around, so she stayed in the home after buying a security system and locking the door up and planning to just never unlock it and basically never go in that room again. So there you have it. I seriously was not expecting that at all, and it has been a long week for her, and I feel terrible. I made her tell me, but she says that she's glad I now know. She never told me before because she didn't want to, which I totally respect. Also, that is when she decided to start a career in law enforcement to help other people. FYI, I have not actually seen in the room, and now I don't feel I ever need to. Roommate has been in the shower for more than 4 hours. So I got home at around 11 p.m. Late night at the office turned into an even later night at the bar. About 4 drinks deep at this point, and I'm tired, just about ready to fall asleep as I stumbled through the doorway. I lay down on the couch and reach for my bag of joints and spark one up as I pull YouTube up on my laptop. I'm in the middle of watching some luxury cruise tour, close passing out when I hear the front door open. I sit up and turn my head slightly, just enough to see my roommate coming in. He hangs his jacket in the closet, doesn't say anything, and walks slowly to his room, which is normal enough. I'd been living with him for about 3 months, long enough for me to pick up most of his tendencies. The guy really doesn't talk unless spoken to, which was far from a problem for me. He also generally kept things clean on his end, never causing much in the way of problems. I really couldn't complain, so I go back to watching YouTube, and about 5 minutes later, I hear the shower in his room turning on. Once again, nothing strange. At this point, I'm watching bare-knuckle boxing highlights with my eyes half open, maybe 1 or 2 minutes away from passing out. I remember waking up in darkness, my head hurting, my throat dry as hell. I sat up slowly, waiting for the grogginess to settle into something manageable. Once it did, I grabbed my phone, checked the time, around 3:30 a.m. from what I remember. I was starving, and so I got up, began walking towards the fridge, and then I noticed it. A soft but ever-present noise in the background. It took me a few seconds to really recognize what it was. The shower. Suddenly, the events of last night began replaying in my head. Drinking at the bar, Ubering home, laptop, and couch. My roommate coming in, home, the shower turning on, and I stood there for a while, trying to make sense of it. Maybe he went to bed and forgot to turn it off? I shook my head. There's no way that happened, I thought. Maybe he slipped and fell? Realizing the implications of this, I rushed towards his room but found his bathroom door locked. I began pounding on it. "Hey man, you alright?" No response. I considered kicking the door down but decided to call 911 before I did that. I took my phone out, preparing to dial when I noticed that I had an unread text. One for my roommate. "Hey man, I couldn't sleep so I went over to my girlfriend's place. Not sure when I'll be back." Sent 2 hours ago. I look at the bathroom door, then back down at my phone. Everything about this was wrong. First of all, my roommate barely texts me and certainly never to tell me that he's going out. Second of all, I know for a fact that he's single and has been for a while. And third of all, who the fuck was in the shower then? I tried calling him. No answer. Sent him some text, but no response. I walked over to his desk and saw the keys and wallet were still beside his laptop. My head's starting to spin at this point and I get out of there, go back into the living room and turn on the lights. I'm pacing around in a circle, trying to follow the plot while also trying to ignore the shower, a noise that I never could have imagined being so dreadful in any context. Sometime later, I hear something vibrating on the kitchen counter. I move towards it and see that it's a phone. My roommate's phone. The panic begins setting in and I immediately grab my keys and run out of the apartment. I make my way down the hall and take the stairs down to the lobby, but even that doesn't seem far enough away, and so I make my way over to the McDonald's across the street. I sit there for a while, considering calling the cops, but for some reason feeling too nervous to do so. But even though there's hardly anybody in there, the place begins to feel suffocating, and I decide to leave, walking back out onto the empty streets. Almost immediately, I get this feeling that I'm being watched, and I feel my gaze drifting up and towards the apartment. Soon, I'm looking at my balcony and I see somebody standing there. A dark figure stood completely straight, stiff to the point where it nearly resembles a mannequin, but it isn't one. If I look closely, I can see it just slightly swaying. I froze in place, my mind hardly able to understand or accept what it was seeing. It's not my roommate. It's too tall. In fact, it's too tall to be anybody I know. Its head nearly scraping the bottom of the balcony above. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make out any of its details. The darkness and distance may have been enough to explain that away, but there was something about it that drove me towards a different conclusion. That this thing simply possessed new details that could have been observed. That the only element of its composition was that of an unadulterated darkness. Of course, my gut instinct was to get the hell away from it, but the voice in my head was telling me that if I were trying to run, this thing would end up following me. I went back into the McDonald's instead, locking myself in the bathroom as I finally dialed 911. I told the operator that somebody had broken into my place, but that I had gotten out of there without them noticing, but that they were still in there. It was a story that most accurately represented the situation without making me come across as batshit. The operator told me that they would be sending somebody over for me to hang tight, I left the bathroom waiting at the table closest to the exit until I could see the red and blue light cutting through the darkness. I went outside to meet the cops, looking up at the balcony to find it empty, though the door to the living room had been left open. They pelted me with a bunch of questions that I found difficult to answer. Is the intruder armed? Do I have an idea who it might be? What are their intentions? I told them I didn't know, that I couldn't figure it out, but they just kept on asking. Soon I was practically yelling at them to go up there and check it out for themselves, and I suppose the terror in my voice was enough for them to begin taking this seriously. They told me to wait by the entrance, and I watched on as they entered the building. I was out there for a long time, growing increasingly anxious at the thought of what they were going to tell me when they came down. A few minutes later, the silence was broken by a single, muffled gunshot. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I continued to wait there, unsure of what to do otherwise. 20 more minutes of silence, and the officers still hadn't come down. Soon I could hear more of them approaching in the distance. Before I knew it, 4 more cop cars had pulled up around me, and the scene had fallen into chaos. Officers shouting over each other and into their radios, more questions being hurled my way, none of which I was able to answer. The next few sequences were mostly a blur, but I remember the building being evacuated, the tenants frightened and confused as they were ushered outside while the officers became more and more frantic. I remember hearing more scattered gunshots, some screaming, other noises that were difficult to make sense of. There were a few lapses in my memory after that, but I recall being pushed into the back of a police car. After being driven to the station, I was led into one of the interrogation rooms where I found 2 nondescript men in suits waiting for me. They didn't introduce themselves and immediately went into a series of questions, each one more bizarre than the last. What company was your roommate employed by? What was the nature of his job? How many different people have been inside your apartment since your roommate moved in? Have you ever heard voices inside the apartment from the hours of midnight to 3 a.m.? Voices that did not belong to your roommate? Have you ever seen a circle of people standing outside of the apartment from the hours of midnight till 3 a.m.? People that were exceptionally tall? And one of the more unsettling ones. Have you ever seen somebody standing at the foot of your bed upon waking up between the hours of midnight to 3 a.m., only for them to disappear moments later? If so, do you remember what they looked like? Any distinct features? As they continued probing me, my mind began conjuring up some of the strange shit that had happened after my roommate had moved in. Shit that I had written off as figments of my imagination, simply because I had no other explanation for them. I did hear the voices, always coming from the room next to mine where my roommate slept. I was always so tired when I heard them, but I do remember it either sounding like a young woman or a man with an extremely deep voice. I could never make out any words, it always sounded like gibberish to me. And then there was that one time where I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, still half asleep. I didn't bother turning the lights on as I entered. But as my eyes began adjusting to the dark, I could have sworn that somebody was already sitting on the toilet, somebody extremely tall. Of course, when I turned on the lights, nothing was there. It was easy to chalk it up as a product of late night drowsiness at the time, and I had never really thought about it since. After doing my best to give them useful information, the suits spent a good few minutes taking notes on their phones. Once they were done, they sat up quickly, told me that they'd be in touch before leaving the room. A cop came in a few minutes later and told me that since I couldn't return to the apartment, they would set me up in a nearby hotel until they, quote, were able to get the situation under control, and that I should stay put until they give me a call. What happened? I asked him. What did you guys find up there? He stared at me for a long time, not as if he were in deep thought, but as if he held deep aversion for what he was considering telling me. Eventually, he shook his head. I don't know, he said. I really don't know. I nodded, tried to smile, though I'm not sure. It didn't come across very well. It's the next day now, and I'm in the hotel. Of course, I couldn't sleep, couldn't really eat. The officer hadn't called me yet. When I tried searching up information about the evacuation on the internet, all I can find are articles claiming that it was due to a fire. A fucking fire. Update. I fell asleep and I just woke up. It's 1 a.m. now. and I can hear the shower. I think my boyfriend is drugging me before bed. Originally posted to r/relationship advice, and the post reads as follows. So I need to shed some backstory to this. I've had really nasty insomnia most of my life. It's come and gone since I was around 10. I have to sleep with blackout window blinds because any amount of light keeps me up. Sometimes the sound of my own breathing can keep me from falling asleep. But even when the insomnia isn't bad, it still takes me at minimum an hour to fall asleep. Coupled with the insomnia, I've always been a very light sleeper. To give a perfect example, one night the power went out, causing my fan to shut off. The switch from the soft humming noise of the fan to complete silence was enough to wake me up. And I usually wake up several times throughout the night for absolutely no reason at all. With all that said, let me jump into why I think I'm being drugged. A few months ago, I began a new medication that has seriously fucked up my libido. If I'm being honest, I've almost lost the desire to have intimacy completely. I still have intimacy from time to time, but mostly just to please my boyfriend and not because I want to. But our intimate life has really plummeted. Again, most nights it takes me an hour to fall asleep after shutting off my phone, but within the past few months, there's been a handful of nights where I'm sitting on my phone, browsing Reddit, or reading when my eyes get really heavy all of a sudden, and next thing I know, I'm completely in a deep sleep. I mean, within minutes. I won't wake up again until the morning. This has never occurred in my life, but I saw it as a blessing because maybe I was finally overcoming my insomnia. This may be TMI, but it's very relevant to the situation. And I can't exactly read what the OP says here because it's very explicit. But basically, I'm just going to kind of PG this. So basically, she says, any ladies that have ever had intimacy or freak time without a condom knows that when you get up after the intimacy, all of the juices falls out of you. That's still pretty explicit, but it's a little bit better than what she said. And she said that whenever she wakes up, she has that same sensation and that same feeling the morning after, such as if she had intimacy the night before, even though she didn't. And so she says, a few days ago, I put two and two together. This always happens the night after I would doze off really suddenly. So obviously, very concerning. I've never ever felt unsafe with my boyfriend, and he's never really pressured me to have intimacy. He'll get really frustrated when I turn him down, but I've chalked it up to blue balls and let it go. But now I've started thinking more and more about it, figuring out logistically how he could be doing this. Every night before bed, I drink a Gatorade in the fridge with my medication. If he is drugging me, he could easily be putting it in my Gatorades. So what the hell am I supposed to do? I mean, bringing this up to him is a pretty huge accusation, especially if I'm wrong. I have no idea how to address this or what I should do. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, take your meds with something else, like water straight from the tap. You can also order date R-word drug testing kits online. You basically dip a bit of paper in your drink, I think, and it'll tell you straight away. If it tests positive, take it and the drink itself to the police as soon as possible. If it's negative, I would say see your doctor. And then the OP responds saying, thanks. I knew there were ways to test yourself after being R-worded to see if you had traces of a drug in your system, but I also knew that those drugs leave your system very quickly. But should I confront him at all? It's so foreign to me to not talk about my problems with him. We've always had such open communication. Someone else says, are your drinks sealed? If they are unsealed, that's a hint. Like everyone else said, take your meds with something you pour yourself. Also, make sure you get your own meds so nothing else is slipped in. As a person who wakes up if a owl farts in China, I feel your pain of not sleeping. And then the OP makes an edit saying, I thought I'd answer a few of the frequently asked questions up here. First being what medication I'm taking. She's taking just a pill. And I've got a lot of people asking why I'm drinking Gatorade before bed. I don't drink those big bottles, just the mini 12-ounce bottles. I drink it because it's a solid way to keep up my electrolytes since I'm not great at keeping myself hydrated. And I guess the way I saw it, I'm already not going to sleep, so drinking something that might affect my ability to sleep won't really matter. And a clarification, when I said I fall asleep within minutes, I didn't mean within minutes of taking my med. There's been a lot of great advice, but I'm probably going to do one of two or both things. Try to record the fridge and see if I can get video of this happening. And I've ordered these drink test strips that you can dip in your drink, and it'll tell you if there are drugs in the drink. And then the OP made an update saying, so I went to inspect my Gatorades in the fridge, and yes, I've heard you, I'll switch to something other than Gatorade. I keep them lined up very neatly, kinda how you'd see at the store. I noticed that about 3 bottles back from the first, the seal was broken open. The drink itself is still completely full. So I took that bottle, broke the seal on one, and put it in its place. I went over to a friend's house because I'm completely panicked now. I don't know what to tell him, but the test strips aren't coming until Tuesday, and I don't want to go back. And then the OP makes an update 4 days later. So let's get into that. Alright, so a lot has happened since I put up my post, and I really did try to keep this short but failed. Per a lot of people's comments, I checked the bottles to see if any were unsealed. I found one bottle a few rows back with a broken seal. In a panic, I took it with me to a friend's and hadn't come back home until today. My friend and I brought a drug test at Walmart, which came up clear. Yesterday, I was able to go into an appointment with my doctor to discuss the symptoms. While she reiterated what you all had said, that the drug side effect along with the paranoia and fatigue, she believes that if what I'm telling her is accurate, it is improbable that I would only be experiencing these side effects so sporadically. She recommended that I see my OB about the passing out. I have not been able to see the OB yet. Today I came home to retrieve the test strips I ordered. I ordered 2 different brands to cover all bases. These would test for a multitude of drugs. I also snooped around for any hidden medications per one commenter's recommendation, but didn't find any. I took the strips back to my friend's house and tried several times. All came up negative. At this point, I was starting to get so aggravated with myself, feeling like it's just paranoia all along. So I decided that I should sit down and talk with my boyfriend about everything. When he got home, I sat him down and explained everything that was going on, from feeling like he's angry about the decrease in intimacy, to the symptoms I was having, to the one opened Gatorade in the refrigerator. He immediately got very angry and defensive, which I thought was weird because I, in no way, brought this up accusatorily. I was as calm as I could be, but he continued to get angry and finally began blaming all of this on my lack of intimacy. He said he'd been getting more and more angry. At this point, I was so frustrated that I told him exactly what I thought he was doing. I asked him if he could give me a logical explanation as to why one Gatorade would be unsealed. He got angry and left without a word, so I took the time to gather my own thoughts. When he came back, he sat me down and confessed to me what was going on. Apparently, he had found out through a friend about a pill, which I guess is the female equivalent to Viagra. He refused to tell me how he obtained these pills, which makes me very uneasy. He said that he had been giving me these pills every so often so that I would be interested in having intimacy. I was rightfully livid, but he kept referencing some movie where the girl was slipping Viagra into her boyfriend's drink, and that's why it was okay for him to do it to me in his mind. That is just fucking wild. He swears up and down that the nights that he gave it to me, even though I was clearly asleep, I was still giving indications that I wanted to have intimacy with him. However, he's given me no explanation of what that means or how I was given such indications. So I sat down to do some of my own research on it. This pill really shows not a whole lot of information on it causing sedation. So I hopped over to medication interaction website. Like I had said, I'm taking the other pill, but I had also taken melatonin, and since spring had started, I've been taking my allergy medication, Sudafed allergy. Under interactions, the ingredients in the Sudafed allergy mixed with this pill causes increased sedation, not to mention the melatonin on top of this. So, unbeknownst to him, slipping me this pill, at who knows what dose, was causing me to feel heavily sedated. He's continued to try and argue that he really has done nothing wrong, and that it was equivalent to him trying to turn me on by doing some things to me. Oh my God. This is just insane. He really said he doesn't think he's done nothing wrong. That is insane. He thinks he's done nothing wrong. That is so terrifying. And the OP says, but I've already told him that he needs to leave. I'm staying at my friend's house in the meantime because I have no interest in sticking around someone that thinks it's okay to slip medication to people. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, holy shit. I mean, he was risking your life with those medication interactions just because he's intimately frustrated. What a scumbag. Someone else says, kick him out and don't ever talk to him. He violated your trust. What a scumbag. He could have talked to you about his feelings, but he thought it was okay to impair someone. And the OP responds to this saying, and the stupid thing is that if he would have just brought the idea to me in the first place about taking something for my libido, I probably would have been open to it. But he decided he'd rather hide it. Someone else says, wow, that is a flat out artist and a criminal in the making. I'm so horrified on your behalf and glad that you're able to stand up for yourself. Please take time to digest this, to mull over your options, whether they be pressing charges, warning his acquaintances, therapy, etc. And the OP responds saying, my friend agrees that I should be pressing charges. As much as I want to, I really have zero evidence of it. When all the Gatorade tests came up null, we threw it out because I definitely wasn't going to drink it anyway. And God, I just wonder what happened because the OP has since deleted their account, so we've gotten no further updates, but just such a horrific and terrifying scenario. And it's so disgusting that the OP's boyfriend was literally just drugging her and then having his way with her. That is just so disgusting and horrific. And honestly, he should be in jail. But I don't know if he ever got, criminal charges or whatever, but he should be in jail because that is so horrific. I mean, yeah, God. I just really hope the OP is doing better now. I almost caused a horrible tragedy while driving drunk. Hi Snook, I've been enjoying these anonymous confessions for a while now, and finally decided it was time to contribute my own. I'll share with you my absolute lowest and most idiotic part of my entire life that nobody knows about. I know drunk driving can be a touchy subject for a lot of people, rightfully so. Pretty much all of us know somebody who was hurt or worse because of drunk driving. You and whoever else is listening may hate me for having done this. That's fine. I genuinely deserve some form of punishment, yet I will never get any. I got away with it. I got incredibly lucky. The collective malice of some anonymous listeners on the internet is better punishment than nothing, I guess. I should apologize, but there has never been anyone to apologize to. So, I'll apologize now to whoever is listening to or reading this. I'm sorry. I'm fucking sorry. There's nothing I can do or say to excuse or justify what I did. So, I'm sorry. This took place quite a few years ago in my early 20s. That was an interesting period of my life filled with a lot of excitement and experimentation. These days, I wouldn't be caught dead doing so much of the stuff that I somehow considered normal. I guess back then, I was a lot more impulsive and still believed I was young and invincible, and was not as concerned about the long-term consequences of my decisions. A lot of the excitement and experimentation of that era was facilitated by the use of drugs and alcohol. I never became addicted to any one thing in particular, but I was often getting intoxicated in some way, shape, or form multiple times a week. If you can name it, I've probably done it. Aside from a variety of the lot more obscure research chemicals and, for YouTube, let's call it the Walter White one. Not because I wouldn't have. The opportunity simply never presented itself, and I didn't feel like putting in the effort to find them. A lot of it was definitely very stupid and irresponsible, and it was a mixed bag of things that had negative and positive impacts on me and my life in general. But I kept my shit together and did everything I needed to get ahead in life. I guess this is kind of like a mini confession here, as only a handful of people close to me know the extent of how deep I really got into drugs. Nowadays, I work a job that requires a high amount of responsibility and trust, and nobody knows, nor will they ever know. These days, I'm pretty much sober, and drugs in general feel like a been there, done that sort of deal, and I usually have a little desire to get intoxicated off of anything, even alcohol. At the end of the day, I don't regret the overwhelming majority of the dumb shit that I did. For me, it was part of the process of growing up and finding myself. I had lots of wonderful experiences I wouldn't trade for anything, and I would do it all over again if I could. However, this confession is one of the few things that I truly regret from the bottom of my heart. If I could go back in time to that point, I would hit myself over the head with a 2x4 and throw my keys into the sewer. I've never told a single person about this. It was just an incomprehensible display of stupidity that occurred and then vanished into the void without any spectators. Back then, I was very much involved in the local music scenes. A lot of us had bands and knew each other and would play with each other and come to each other's shows. This particular night took place at a cool bar with a nice stage that hosts local shows as well as world-famous touring bands. This was a local show, and I knew a lot of the people playing in the bands, and there was also a great turnout from people in the scene. Lots of my friends were there. The music was fucking great. I was just having a great time. Everyone was. The vibes were perfect, so, of course, I was drinking. Why wouldn't I? The venue was about a 30-minute drive from my place, on the other side of the city from the suburb I was living in, but fuck it, right? This show will only happen once, and we're all having a great time now, so I'll just keep on drinking. Inevitably, the show ended, and the bar started getting ready to close. As it was approaching 2 a.m., I said my goodbyes to all my friends and started walking to my car. The reality of the situation started to really hit me. The reality that I was fucking drunk and have a 30-minute drive home through a part of the city I'm not too familiar with. Not sloppy falling over drunk, but pretty fucking drunk, right on the edge of seeing double. My options were ask one of my friends who were literally right there to give me a ride and or a place to crash, get a taxi to take me home or to a cheap hotel, call my parents, call another one of my friends that weren't at the show, or just drive home anyway. Fuck it. The hassle and inconvenience of doing those other things was just too much to deal with, I guess. So I start driving. The ride out of the city and onto the highway was uneventful. As soon as I got into the highway, I set my cruise control to the speed limit so I could focus 100% of my attention to my surroundings and staying in my lane. A few minutes later, I thought it was neat that I had not seen a single other driver on the highway. Nobody in front of me, nobody coming up behind me, and not even anyone on the other side of the road. It was past 2 a.m., so I guess it's not that unusual. So I cranked up my cruise control a little bit, then I cranked it up a little bit more, then some more. Before I knew it, I had set it to 90 miles an hour, and there was still not a single person on the road. If anyone was behind me, there'd be no way for them to catch up to me either. I'd never gone that fast in a car before, and it felt cool. I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. Excitement. Pure fucking excitement. An adrenaline rush creeping up and seeping throughout my whole body until I started glowing and tingling with pleasure, for reasons that will be forever unknown to me. I, without thinking, slapped the cruise control off and slammed my foot on the gas. Pedal to the fucking metal. I watched the speedometer climb higher and higher. 100. 110. It felt like I was in an airplane getting ready to take off. Everything was whooshing by me so fast. I didn't even feel drunk anymore. I was fucking flying, physically and mentally. I then heard the ding 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 sound from my car that occurs when a notification pops up on the little screen. It said, maximum speed reached. It was a random number like 116 miles an hour. The pedal was still all the way down, yet the car stopped accelerating. My heart was pounding. My body was still tingling. I took maybe 5 to 10 seconds to savor the feeling, and then once I felt like I had my fill, I took my foot off the pedal. Gradually, I coasted back down to 110, 100, 90, 80, and then as soon as I reached the highway speed limit, I popped cruise control back on and was chilling. And my car has a programmed speed limiter. I had no idea. How quaint. And there's still nobody else on the road. And then I started fucking laughing, cackling like a goddamn hyena. And then I drove the rest of the way home and went to bed without a care in the world. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't believe that happened. I wanted to believe that it was a dream, but no, I actually did that. I actually flew down the highway at 116 miles an hour while drunk as hell. What a fucking stupid thing to do. If there was anyone else on the road in the wrong place at the wrong time, it could have been a disaster. If there was debris in the road that I couldn't avoid, it would have been a disaster. If I had lost control of the vehicle, it would have been a disaster. If there was a cop doing radar, I probably would have gone to prison and had my license revoked indefinitely. So many horrible things could have happened. I could have ended someone's life, along with my own. Realistically, I would have been lucky if I had gotten caught and gone to prison. Yet somehow, some way, none of that happened. Nothing happened. I just kept going and made it home. Nobody saw it. It's like it never happened. And that's my story. Maybe anticlimactic, but that's a good thing. Is what I did as bad as I think it is? Or am I being dramatic? In my head, that's pretty up there on the list of stupid and irresponsible shit to do. All these years later, it still makes me anxious just thinking about it. The entire thing lasted less than a minute, but the whole trajectory of my life and the lives of others could have changed in an instant because of one stupid, pointless decision. I try not to live. I got into my car and almost drove away while my kids slept. 2 years ago, my ex-wife, Milani, 37 female, and I, 36 male, separated. The divorce was a mutual decision made by the fact that she was cheating on me with a coworker and wanted to be with him. We have 5 kids together, age 13, 12, 10, 8, and 6, and a cat. Based on several factors, she has weekly visitation and I have full custody of them, but doesn't ever show up for the visitation and seems to have given up on the children. I work as a teacher, an already exhausting job as it is, and I spend every minute of my day either with my kids or kids that aren't mine, cooking and cleaning and breaking up fights and grading papers, and then by the time the kids are asleep, the fucking, still love them though, cat wants attention and I want to scream from the top of my lungs. I'm tired. I'm fucking exhausted. I can't do this. I'm working and taking care of 6, living, breathing beings, and I feel betrayed and I'm so tired. Last night I stood up and walked out of the house, got in the car and started it. The kids were asleep and I sat there, in the car, 5 seconds away from driving away. I wanted to drive away. I wanted to drive until I ran out of gas. And then I thought about my kids waking up and not having anybody around, and I walked back inside. But I still want to run away. This morning I wanted to run away. I had to restrain myself from driving away while driving to work. I hate myself for being so quick to want to drive away from my kids. My kids, who I love more than anything in the world, were so quick to not have a father. This morning, while I was driving to work, I made peace that I wasn't going to drive away. I wanted to veer off the road and into a ditch and die. I feel awful for this. I want to scream it from the rooftops. I feel awful, and yet I will know that I will fight the urges again in a few minutes when school lets out. And Jesus, man, that is an insane post. I can feel the OP's sadness and everything just from the post. But God, that is just such a heartbreaking post. And I mean, the OP's name is Throwaway Stressed Die, which is unfortunate to hear. And the account has been banned, so we haven't been able to see if the OP's made any other posts or anything. And wow, that is truly so sad. Let's get into some of the top comments and see people's thoughts. Someone says, she cheats and leaves the kids. I cannot help but feel infuriated. I forgot what I wanted to even tell you. Sigh. You are one fucking amazing person, and I hope that life pays you back for your awesome good deeds. Stay strong, buddy. Someone else says, replying to that, saying, not just that, shouldn't OP take lots of child support and alimony from the ex? Like, she cheated and left the kids. OP should sue the ex with the most expensive fucking divorce, make her pay for the rest of her life. And then that's a good point. I don't really know the ins and outs of child support and stuff like that, but I mean, yeah, this guy was left all on his own with 5 kids. God, I can't imagine. And I mean, all respect to teachers, but they don't have the best salary in the world. And to take care of himself and 5 kids, I can't even begin to feel what the OP feels, the stress and the hopelessness. It's just a sad, sad situation in post. Someone else says, what a great confession. And I mean about the depth, truth, and quality, not about the content. The content is heartbreaking. I'm doubtful I have much useful to say, but it sounds like you're doing right at the end of your tether. If these types of thoughts are starting to sneak in, then you might be reaching the limits of your emotional capacity to deal with the stress and hurt. These situations can lead to full breakdowns unless they're addressed. I don't know what support you do/don't have, but if there's anyone in real life you can lean on emotionally, then now's the time to do it. If your work, church, or other local/public/affordable services offer counseling, then do it first chance you can. Even just one session to get going. Touch base and maybe vent or cry. You've got to take care of yourself a bit. You're valuable and crucial in your own right. Even besides that, if you fall apart entirely and your better judgment doesn't kick in next time, the consequences could make things so much worse. Time to cash in those credits. You need help now. Please find some. If it is possible at all. You have my prayers. And sadly, the OP did not respond to any of these comments. And so what I'm guessing has happened, the OP was, feeling emotional stress and just made this post to kind of cry out into the Reddit void or the internet void, like a lot of people do, and just never kind of came back. But like I said, the account was banned, so there's no other posts from the OP. There's no comments from the OP, at least that we can see. But I just hope the OP is still around and doing well, and I hope his family recovered. And yeah, just such a depressing post and such a, like the person said, such a deep confession and kind of like a good confession. But I really hope the OP pulled through, stayed strong, stayed a good, father for his kids, a good teacher for his kids that he teaches. And wow, that was intense. On to the next one. I saw a humanoid, something in the woods outside my childhood home. This was rural northern Wisconsin and I was 14. Up until that day, I had zero fear of the woods. I spent most of my time out there exploring and feared nothing. My parents had a lousy marriage and fought a lot, and I felt more at home outside than in the house. On hot nights, I would take a sleeping bag and sleep on the roof of an old shack on our property. I saw bears, I saw wolves. They were always more afraid of me than me of them. I didn't believe in ghosts, Bigfoots, demons, or even God. I only got lost out there once when dark fell sooner than I expected. I stayed calm, found the North Star, and knew that if I continued south, I'd eventually come across the old railroad tracks near my house. Even the thought of spending the night out there didn't bother me. The thought of my mom's rage when I didn't come home did. So it was summer. I had just turned 14. My mom had left my father worked all the time, sister was living on her own. Once school was out, it was me and my cat, and this is before the internet or smartphones. We lived on the dead-end dirt road, and around noon I took my usual stroll down the long driveway to check the mail. My cat followed me everywhere, and I actually kind of relied on him to give me the heads up if there was a bear or something close by. A bit of movement behind me as I stood at the mailbox made me aware that something across the road in the trees, but there was pesky deer everywhere. I heard a loud crash, then like something very loudly making its way through the brush. It's like every goddamn classic horror movie. My brain had no capability for the thought of anything paranormal or spooky. I simply tucked the mail under my arm and headed into the woods to investigate. My cat followed close behind. I got about 10 yards in when I noticed what I hadn't noticed before. There was no noise. Nothing. It was a beautiful June day and there wasn't a single bird singing, no insects, no leaves rustling. It was absolutely silent. At the same time, I registered the silence. I got that eerie feeling that something was watching me. I stopped immediately and started scanning the woods for deers, hunters. Know what I'm talking about when I say you look for the shape of a deer instead of trying to pinpoint them by color. That's when I spotted it. 2 brown, furry legs. The top of it concealed by tree branches. I went to sigh with relief when my cat hissed. I looked down and he was completely poofed out with his back arched, looking at the same thing I was. I looked back up and the legs moved. Not like a deer, like a human. Everything happened at once after that. I dropped the mail, picked up my cat by the scruff and ran for it. Whatever was out there with me was running after me. I've never run so fast in my life. I tore up the driveway, into the house, locked the door and grabbed the phone. I called my next door neighbor, who was the ex-chief of police, when he came over immediately with his pistol. He checked out the spot I was in and found nothing. I was so hysterical I was in tears. He stayed with me until I was able to reach my mom and have her come get me. Of course they thought I was completely high or delusional. I know exactly what I saw and felt. It was broad daylight. I never felt safe in those woods again and stopped sleeping outside. Edit. I should probably add that I thought I was looking at a deer's forelegs, but once it took a step I realized the legs were far too thick and human, but with fur for that, and there were only 2 legs, not 4. Plus I realized it was way too tall for a deer to be concealed by the tree branches. It all happened within seconds. Edit 2. I was and still am the calm, rational middle child, and my parents trusted me. They let me sleep outside. Sometimes we all did to catch a meteor shower. I'd casually mention running into a wild animal. My dad would casually say, "You made a lot of noise?" Good. I was quiet and sensible, and had never freaked out about anything before then. I had my neighbor's number for emergencies and had never called him prior to that. This is how shaken I was. I was embarrassed when he and my mom looked at me like a fool, and later, when my dad also didn't believe me. Not once did my instincts set me off in those woods, until that very moment, when I absolutely, beyond a doubt, realized I was prey and ran for my life. I was hiking in the Cascades ahead and finally tell my story. It's not very K-like, to be honest. It's not in a woods. I have no funds at the time. There are no skinwalkers / goatmen / flesh gates involved, as far as I know anyways, but I feel compelled to finally getting around to writing the out, just for the record, and maybe so you guys can get some spoops out of it. Back when I was 17, I lived just outside of Washington, D.C. I enjoyed it well enough for the most part. D.C. is no fun and has a massive homeless problem, but isn't a complete shithole. I was a complete autist in school with depression and shit, and I got kicked out of my nice Catholic prep school due to shit grades. Instead of sending me to public school over in Virginia, where I lived, my parents decided to send me to a non-traditional school in the city. In addition to school, I had a job at a shitty movie theater in Rockville, which is just outside DC to the northwest. Now, I was 17 at the time, but had no driver's license. When I was able to get my learner's permit at 15, I procrastinated due to not wanting to go to the DMV for a whole year. When I finally did get my permit, I did my hours and my driving course and such, but fell into the same trap of not wanting to go to the DMV, so I didn't get my license until I was almost 18. So because of this, and because my parents rightfully didn't want to drive me into DC every day during rush hour, only to then have to go back into Virginia to get to work, I took the metro to school and work every day. If there are any Washingtonians here, then you might understand my route. I started out on the Virginia side of the Potomac River to the east of the city at Virginia Square / GMU Station, which is on the Orange Line. For the purposes of this story, the Orange Line starts in Virginia and ends just outside of DC to the northeast, and the Red Line starts out northwest, where my job was, and then went down into the center of DC and up to the northeast again. My school is about a block away from the Eastern Market Metro Station on the Orange Line, about 3/4 of a mile southeast from the Capitol along Pennsylvania Avenue. My job was a little ways away from the Rockville Metro Station. When my shift ended at around 11:15, I had to book it to the Metro stop most days. Stations close at 12 Sunday through Thursdays. and take the red line down to Metro Station, which, as the name suggests, is the central DC. Switch to the orange line, then take the orange line to East Falls Church in Virginia, from which I would take the bus or a cab home. I'll put it all in a map I'll make and post along with this. Sorry, a whole post of this is just setup. The setup is important. So, now that all that is established, I can start getting into the story. For a couple months, everything was completely unremarkable. I had hidden the Metro on and off for most of my life, but never this extensively, so I was fine with the whole experience. The only part that ever felt weird to me was coming home at night. During the weekends, even at like 1 a.m., people were on the Metro, but during the week when I came home from work, it was very common for me to be the only person on the train and sometimes even the only person in the entire station, though I wasn't really spooked by it, at least for a while. I always sat up front in the train, like the very front. I liked looking out the front of the train and watching the tracks go by. I loved doing this as a kid, and I still did because I was a child, even at 17. One night, I was riding the red line back from Rockville to Metro Center. I was the only person in the car, probably in the train. I caught the last train before the system closed. I was looking out the front of the train like usual when I saw something weird. It looked like a white branch, like birch or something. It was thin, almost spindly. It was pressed up against the wall when I first saw it. As the train's headlights started to hit it, I thought it must have been a length of wire or pipe. But then it moved. It was really quick, not even like twitchy quick. It just suddenly moved out of the edge of the headlights of the train, and I couldn't see it anymore. I wrote it off in my head as being overworked, as cliche as that is. After all, tending to a popcorn machine on a pretty much empty movie theater is hard work. I pretty much forgot about the incident over the course of the week due to school and such occupying my mind. And then, about a week later, I saw it again, in about the same place on the line. This time, it was on the opposite end of the tunnel, and I got to see a little bit more of this thing before it moved away. It was connected to something bigger, like a leg connected to a body, which is what immediately conjured up in my mind. As the train's headlights hit it, it moved away with the same agility, but this time, about 10 seconds later, I saw it again, and it did the same thing. And then, a few days later, it happened again. This time, all I saw was what looked like a foot before whatever it was scampered off into the darkness. At this point, I was freaking the fuck out. I felt that terrible, deep-seated desire to know more start to grow. I started to be vigilant for the weird leg anytime I was on my way home from work. I would see it more and more often over time. Sometimes I would see a little more of that leg. Sometimes I would even see two of the legs, but it would always scamper into the darkness as soon as the light from the train hit it. Sometimes I would see it a few times during one ride, sometimes not. I started trying to record whatever it was. I would take a notepad with me and record between which stops I would see it, how much of it I saw, and if I saw it repeatedly. At one point, it occurred to me to ask the train operator if he saw anything. So one night, after I got off at East Falls Church, I quickly asked the operator up front if he ever saw anything weird when he drove the trains at night. I tried not to be a spurg about it, but he seemed on edge when I asked him, even though he replied with a simple nah. Things continued like this for a while, and seeing the thing almost became part of my routine of getting home. I wasn't scared of it anymore. Not really, since I was in a fast-moving metal missile and the thing never seemed to be hostile or anything. Things just continued to go about the same path. Until one night, shit got fucking real. I was riding on the train, and I was waiting for the leg to show up, but it didn't. I had seen it every day for the past 2 weeks, but there was nothing tonight. I was thinking to myself something along the lines of being sad that the 2-week streak was coming to a close when I saw them. Two glints in the darkness. My eyes at this point had gotten so used to spotting things in the darkness due to months of spotting this thing in addition to years of playing Twitch shooters, so I saw them there and I knew they weren't normal, but I still tried to rationalize it, even after months of spotting a leg in the metro tunnels. But then they blinked. It was unmistakable that it was a blink that had occurred. I jumped so hard I nearly pulled a muscle in my leg. I could tell that those eyes I saw were entirely black. Black and beady, like the eyes of a rat. Suddenly, my fear for the thing in the dark was renewed. I was on the edge for the rest of the ride to Metro Center. Though I still felt safe inside the train, I was realizing the gravity of the situation. There was something in the dark of the tunnels of the Metro, and it had taken enough of an interest in me to show up almost daily. That thought followed me to Metro Center. Ironically, I felt safer in the station than I did on the train due to the simple fact that I had never seen anything weird in the stations. I got to Metro Center, got off the train, and waited for my next train. It was then I started hearing it, a soft pitter-patter, not unlike that of a rodent scurrying across the floor. I became on edge again. The noise started getting louder, and I started to shit myself more, at the point where it started actually sounding like human footsteps. I said fuck it to myself and turned around towards the tunnel where my train had come from. I shouldn't have. It was there, not just a leg or eyes. The thing in its entirety. And it wasn't in the tunnel anymore. It was on the platform with me. That thing is something I will never forget. It was like a person, but warped to the point where almost all traces of humanity were gone. It was thin, horribly thin, emaciated. I could see how its pallid, gray flesh wrapped around its bones, not even covering the holes in some of its legs and arm bones. It was hunched over, not on all fours, but hunched over like an elderly person, with its legs crumpled down and its arms held in front of its chest like how a prairie dog holds its arms when it stands up. Its head was completely hairless and was hung down so I couldn't make out its face. I opened my mouth to scream, but I just whimpered like a baby. I shouldn't have done that. I think I provoked it. It started to move towards me with a horrible gait. It stayed in its hunched over position, low to the ground, but its legs extended out and it took long strides forward, like crouch walking. Its legs wobbled and twitched with each step towards me. It was obvious this thing wasn't used to walking like this, that it was better suited to crawling along the walls. As it came closer, I started to smell it. It had the pungent, rancid odor of trash in the city. My eyes started to water as it got closer. Speaking of which, it was closing the gap fast. When I first turned around, there must have been about 150 feet between us, but within 5 or 6 steps, it was only about half that distance away. My stupid brain finally kicked in and put me into survival mode, and I fucking booked it across the platform. My stupid idea was to try and outrun it by the end of the platform, then jump across the tracks to the other platform and keep running out towards the surface. My plan got about a quarter of the way done when I realized it wasn't going to work, because that's when the thing stretched out. I looked over my shoulder and shit myself again. The thing was now standing on its legs and had its arms out. I don't know how I only managed to see as much as I did in the tunnel, but what I saw in there wasn't accurately representing the whole thing. It must have been 15 feet tall at least. Its torso was thinner than its femur. Its arms came down to its shins as it let them drag along, and then there was its face. Its face looked like that of a starving man, with sallow skin tightly wrapping its cheekbones like a corset. Its eye sockets were far too big for its beady little eyes, with the top of the socket jutting out of a good 2 inches beyond where the eye ended, and the mouth was a gaping hole with no jaw to be seen. This thing had reached its full height, and I had just about made my peace with death when some beautiful motherfucker honked the horn of his train that was coming in downstairs to signify to no one that no one could get on. I don't know why, but that horn caused the monstrosity in front of me to reel backwards and let out the most horrible sound I've ever heard before going down on all fours and scuttling back into the tunnel. I took a cab home that night, and then pretty much every night for the rest of the year. I haven't gone on the metro there since. I've moved farther into Virginia, so I haven't been around Washington, but even if I was back there, I wouldn't take the metro again if it meant losing $1 trillion or whatever. I did some more research. Apparently, there are urban myths of something in the tunnels down there. I also found out about a series of abandoned tunnels just under DuPont Circle, the metro stop nearest to which I commonly saw the thing. That's pretty much it. Here's a map of where I saw the thing with stations where I was near when I saw it marked and areas to avoid marked. OP is in a psychology graduate program with a predator slash gaslighter training to be a counselor. Let's get into it. We're in a professional graduate program for psychology and in our early to mid-20s. I met him, I'll call him Nate, at the start of the academic year and thought he was very put together, charming, and sensitive. He was very good at group exercises where we practiced counseling skills. He had a way with words and came off as deeply compassionate. When we first met, I got a strange feeling from him that I couldn't quite put my finger on. However, he was a super charismatic guy with a trusting face and dazzling smile, so I felt my guard come down. One weekend, we are drinking and watching movies at a mutual friend's house with a small group of people. Nate was very flirty with me and wanted to take shots with me in particular, which my friend, Mia, noticed. I was later told that he was saying how bad he wanted to hook up with me. By midnight, I was admittedly very drunk and warm and wanted to go change out of my sweater. While I was completely topless, I saw someone walk by out of the corner of my eye. Thinking it was just someone walking to the bathroom, I didn't pay much attention. But then I noticed the person came back and peered through the doorway. Fortunately, Mia had come to check on me moments before and saw him looking into the room while I was unclothed. She blocked me from view and yelled at him to get out. I was confused because I thought I had imagined it, even though Mia saw him too. Nate later said that I misperceived the situation, and I believed it and buried the incident. Before you judge me or anyone else for not coming forward sooner, just know that this man is the king of gaslighting and was able to manipulate all of our professors who are experienced doctors of psychology. After the night, Mia told me why she didn't want to let me go alone when I left to change. Weeks before, she had been at a party with Nate where he took advantage of a drunk girl who could barely walk straight. He would have R-worded her, but his roommate heard what was going on and stopped him. Apparently, they argued with him for an hour before he agreed to leave the barely conscious girl alone. Then, another woman came forward. She was in a relationship with Nate for 2 months and set boundaries in their intimate life because she was saving herself for marriage. She said she didn't even realize they were having intimacy and didn't want to, but was told by Nate that this was normal and how relationships worked. Another classmate who was emotionally vulnerable at the time dated Nate for 4 weeks and said that he constantly projected, gaslighted, and manipulated her. When she confronted him about the concerns she had about his alleged behavior towards women, not knowing the severity of it, he berated her for being abusive to him for, quote, bringing up things that happened years ago, which is a line he used on multiple women. It makes me think he has past allegations beyond this. He justifies all of his behavior, no matter how egregious, and claims that he is actually the victim. The only person that tried to stand up to Nate, his roommate who stopped the SA on that woman, was discredited and retaliated against by him. He made sure no one would take her seriously and intimidated / manipulated her into staying quiet and not reporting the incident. He has lied to and deceived people trying to discredit his victims and uses people's personal information and compassion against them. Unfortunately, the professors and managers only see the mask he wears and all love him. I am honestly scared of Nate and believe he is gaining the power of psychology to take advantage of vulnerable people and fulfill his own ego. I know in my gut that he will continue to hurt women, including future patients and students. He has his next hunting ground set too. He was appointed the training assistant of a counseling skills class where first-year students disclose personal info in order to practice therapy skills. Most of his students will be young, compassionate women who won't know what hit them. I am terrified. So I brought this information, along with witnesses and tons of hard evidence, to the misconduct committee. They are taking it very seriously, and it sounds like this motherfucker actually might be expelled and unable to practice psychology in the nation. This would be the best outcome. However, he was tipped off that women in our class, including me, are involved in a report against him. He is emotionally unstable and has a history of retaliation. So that's not great. He has already sent me a text saying that he needs to talk to me before things get out of hand. Right now, he thinks there is no way he'll be held accountable for his actions. I truly think he believes he's done nothing wrong, but he has no idea how strong her case is. He's going to find out he's screwed when they notify him of the formal claim. Then it's a matter of time before he finds out I initiated the process that's going to bring him down. Kinda scary, but kinda worth it. Nate is the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's terrifying to think he could have become a counselor with that much power over vulnerable women. I can't believe a person like this exists, and I'm so glad so many women have come forward to stop him. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, who tipped him off on who was reporting him? That's a very important question. How does he know? It's important because you and I both know that psychology is a heavily female field, but the majority of those in charge are men. Just like in education, just like in health professions, just like in most female majority industries. Question why he was chosen for the teaching assistant position. Were other just a qualified candidates applying? Is the person or committee that chose him a part of who has received a report against him? Did you apply, or one of the reporting women? Was it not even an application process? Look at his connections with everyone involved in the process, including the people in charge of the people. I work for a community college health professions department. Not as rigorous as your program, obviously, but there are many similarities. The biggest is how the men in the program are treated. If you watch, the men will lead discussions more often, especially about anything female-oriented. Will be prompted for an opinion more often by professors and students alike. Will frequently become in charge of whatever extracurricular activities are going on, or if not in charge, they will act like it or get close to whoever is in charge. They treat professors very different than other students. I suspect he is probably almost superiorly differential to the professors, but if you watch, he will probably still do things the way he wanted and spin that he misunderstood, or no, that's definitely what was discussed. We think professors should surely notice, especially psych professors, but in my experience, there's just too much to do in the day to notice student behaviors when they are being easy. Don't automatically assume he will get punished. Not if he found out before he was officially told about the reports, and definitely not if he was told by whom the reports were made. Question everything. Keep a log of connections. You say you have solid evidence. Is it just recounts for other people? Because 9 times out of 10, that's not good enough. The school will pass it off as a police issue, and police will say it's a Title IX issue, and it'll disappear. You're awesome and badass about all of this, but I don't trust colleges as far as I can throw them. Working for one, even just a community college, has taught me not to. If it's a public and state-funded school, they will avoid scandal to keep funding. If it's private, they will do anything to keep a tuition-paying student on board. Be careful. Don't automatically trust anyone involved in the report, and be safe. And also, the greatest revenge for someone being a gross human being is to be awesome. So do your best in your program. Psychology is at least 50% intuition, and you have a solid gut instinct. You'll go far. And then the OP responds to this saying, thanks for your reply. To clarify, he was tipped off by a friend of one of the survivors/victims. The survivor wanted to warn her friend because she also knew Nate. Since Nate used preemptive strikes to protect his reputation in case someone came forward, the friend believed that people were just out to get him. So she warned him that a group of women were filing a report, but no other details. The evidence we have include a ton of documented communication, including him admitting guilt. Messages also document his toxic, narcissistic, emotionally abusive tendencies towards women. It's a small program and quite liberal. The only way for him to get out of this with zero punishment is if the Title IX committee determines the victims are lying, which I don't believe they would do. I don't want to assume the best outcome will happen, but odds are in our favor. Someone else says, this guy sounds like Ted Bundy. Decent looking guy using his looks and charm to get what he wants as well as being manipulative. How sick to go into a profession so you can also prey on women possibly. This guy needs to be stopped. Don't forget there's a power in numbers, and the other girl that came forward is an asset here. I would write something anonymously to every professor as well as the dean if you don't feel comfortable with them knowing who did it, but I would sign all 3 names, including your friend Mia, that he is a danger. Hold nothing back either. You could be saving countless women from having their lives ruined. It's so disheartening and sickening to read things like this. And then we don't hear from the OP in about a year and a half. And then we finally get an update, like I said, a year and a half later. So let's get into the update. Reading back on this post is like I'm reading someone else's writing. There was too much I didn't know and was not prepared for. So much happened after this that it deserves its own post. But long story short, another survivor, Sophia, not real name, and I went forward and participated in a Title IX misconduct hearing against Nate. The university found him in violation of multiple misconduct violations, including SA, non-consensual intimacy in Sophia's case, and SH in mine. For reasons unknown, they went against the recommended sanction for SA, which is expulsion, and gave him a 4-year university suspension. My guess is that they did this to protect him under FERPA, FERPA, I don't know what that stands for, which would therefore protect the institution. Also, the friend who tipped him off about the investigation was in fact the classmate who was, quote, emotionally vulnerable at the time. Turns out she was a secondary aggressor who was in an off-again, on-again relationship with Nate and befriended me in order to help Nate manipulate and keep tabs on me. We even signed onto an apartment with a 3rd roommate. A week before the hearing, I discovered, in the most shocking way, that her and Nate were secretly dating and that she gave him our new address as well as other private information. She did so much worse, but it ended with her moving out upon our request, only to move within our same apartment complex, of course, then harassing and stalking me and another friend involved. I told you it's enough for a part 2. I was moving forward and trying to put it all behind me. Then a few months ago, Sophia and I discovered in a separate incident that Nate was working for 2 mental health jobs in our city. One of them was a mental health clinic that specializes in domestic and violence. Sophia and I met up with a lawyer to discuss what we could legally do. We decided to file anonymous reports with our state's licensing board and reach out to his work's HR with his misconduct violations. The HR I spoke to was a domestic violence counselor who had a similar experience to me. So she seemed genuine when she said she believed me and took this seriously. Of course, I know by now how to proceed with caution in terms of hopes and expectations. This situation was traumatic, and something tells me I might not have seen the last of Nate, but I am stronger and older now. I see things through a more realistic lens and have learned how to accept things that seemed impossible to get past. I know that one day, Nate is going to slip up so bad that he won't be able to get away with it anymore. I just hope that our work will make a difference for the next person who tries to stop him. And the top comment on this post is, man, what a disappointing ending. Nate escaped his deserved punishment and still managed to work with vulnerable people. OP got harassed by one of Nate's victims because she tried to do the right thing. Does a verbally and mentally abusive man really mean it when he admits to his faults and says he wants to change? I've been with my boyfriend almost 3 years. It's been a seriously rocky relationship. He has been verbally abusive towards me, referring to me as stupid, an R word, spastic, B word, ugly, a piece of trash, worthless, and also wished a miscarriage on me and hoped that it hurt when I thought I was pregnant. For the past 10 months, he has also been breaking up with me and getting back together so frequently, it's almost a weekly thing. He's flirted with other girls behind my back and has binged on drink and drugs and left me to deal with him in some out-of-control states. Along with all that, there has been a lot of passion and chemistry between us. I feel a complete connection to him when he's not being abusive. I love the good person in him. I can honestly say I have never felt more comfortable and content when we are together. And when his personality is pleasant, I am in love with him. And I can't stop loving him. I ended things with him on the morning of my birthday after sending me a message saying, "You're a piece of crap. Happy birthday, you effing C-word." I wasn't even upset. I had just reached the point where I could walk away. Since then, he's been apologizing profusely, has admitted that he needs to mature and change his ways, has told me he doesn't want to lose me, and he wants to give me all the love I deserve. He's never talked like this before. I told him to change before, and his response was, "I don't need to change." So I'm questioning now if he really means what he is saying. Everyone I've been getting advice from in my life has been women. I would just like to get a man's perspective. Can men like this really change? Or should I let him go? It would be so much easier if I didn't love him. But I do, and it's so difficult to let go. And the top comment on this post reads, "Nope, that's pretty standard behavior for abusive people. They want you in their control, and they will do anything to get you back in there. You finally managed to get away. Don't mess that up now. It's just nice words, nothing more. Cut contact, block him, maybe sleep at a friend's place for a few nights so he can't come knocking at your door." And then the OP makes an edit to her post and says, "Thanks to everyone who replied. I have read all your messages. I have had a good think and have decided I deserve better and to move on." And unfortunately, the OP did not move on. And 7 months later, the OP comes back with an update titled, "7 months ago, I posted to r/askmen asking for a male's opinion if an abusive man can change. I didn't listen to the advice and paid the consequences. I think others in my position should see this." And the post reads as follows. "Well, I was stupid enough to take him back. To cut a long story short, one of the conditions for me taking him back was that we tried long distance, as I went to study abroad from October to February. I have to say, throughout this time, I did see a slight change in him. And honestly, my insecurities about the past were the main cause of arguments, however. He did still have those abusive tendencies, playing mental games, threatening to have intimacy with other people, breaking up with me every second, etc. He was so good at what he did though, declaring his undying love and other BS to reel me back in. In January, however, he suggested he moved with me to stay with me for my last month abroad. Silly me agreed. I paid for everything. His flights, rent, food. Was just so happy that we were reunited. Everything seemed to be perfect. But looking back now, the saying, "too good to be true," comes to mind. The day before he moved, he begged me to trust him and reassured me all his future plans included him. The last week together, he told me he couldn't imagine us ending. He couldn't imagine starting all over again with someone else, as we had seen and been through too much together. I was walking on air. Then it happened. After a really fun night out where I introduced him to my friends, everyone's spirits were high except his. He became verbally abusive after we parted ways with my friends, telling me to shut the F up for no reason, with a smirk on his face. Not going into too much detail, as is a long story, but when we got back to our apartment, an argument escalated. Next thing I know, he has me pinned down to the bed, strangling me. I felt his fingers pressing down deeper, so I reached for his face and clawed it. It was only then did he let go. I was bent over on the bed on all fours in hysterics, screaming, crying, choking for breath, and he actually rubbed my back and asked if I was okay. The only words I could get out was, "You strangled me." Within 10 minutes, he had packed his stuff and left, not before telling me I'm pathetic and that nobody would believe me because he has marks on my face and I have none on mine. After he left, I ran for help. Police and paramedics were involved. They have pointed out a black eye that I didn't even notice. He obviously hit me before pinning me down. Turns out, he was arrested at the airport trying to leave the country and questioned but was let go and was told to go home. I flew home a couple of days later to be with my family and have since taken out a restraining order against him. I have had no contact now with him since that day, but I do have a court hearing with him this month to see if I should be extended or if he wants to contest it. I feel like I should apologize to the people who offered me advice. I literally did not listen to my family, friends, and strangers on the internet, and it nearly cost me my life. I'm now left to deal with trauma of it. I'm pretty sure he is ruining my reputation behind my back, as friends and people who once interacted with me have stopped. I confided in one of my good friends about what happened, and I discovered she had been in close contact with him, going out with him, etc., and she's claiming she's trying to keep it neutral, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's told people I'm lying. The level of betrayal I feel is heartbreaking. I genuinely loved him and was committed to him. He was always mentally, verbally, and emotionally abusive. The height of the physical abuse was a few pushes and shoves, but this escalated so quickly into attempted murder, and it's scary how quickly someone can snap. I'm now reading old messages between us, and I'm completely disgusted with myself. I stayed with this animal for so long. The way he spoke to me and treated me was horrific. That being said, it is still early days, and I still find myself to love him. God knows why. I need counseling. So hopefully anyone, male or female, who is in the same position as I was, learns from my mistakes. These people certainly do not change. Edit. Seriously overwhelmed by all of the support. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Although you are all strangers, it's nice to know that there are people out there who care. I may not be able to reply to all your comments, but I'm reading every one of them and value the advice given. And this is the last update we have ever received from the OP. My spouse is